Mr. Andrew Okello, who is going to uh, be moderating this session. And just quickly allow me to read to you a small, should I say small, or some achievements that Mr. Andrew has been able to, I think, I don't know who is projecting. Okay, thank you. So you can see there, Mr. Andrew Okello is a assistant auditor at Opportunity Bank, where he is currently providing assurance duties, having obtained qualifications in CISA, CISM, and CRISC for MySACA. He is currently growing a career in cybersecurity and has obtained certifications from the ISC to EC Council and Huawei Technologies. And he's also studying a CPENT from certification from EC Council. He is a program and application developer for IoT devices, robotics, and artificial intelligence. Andrew holds 2 degrees, and that is a bachelor's degree, bachelor's in computer science and data science from Barari University of Science and Technology, and also international business machine, which is IBM, and is now a student of Mass and Business Administration. Besides formal employment, he is a co-founder of Shamos Tech Solutions, at an IT consultancy firm that trains upcoming software engineers and provides IT solutions in Uganda. Andrew has enjoyed growing tech communities in Uganda as a Google developer community lead. Andrew is a member of ISACA and is proud to be associated with such a large community of IT professionals in Uganda and across the world. So Andrew is one of us, and you can see the growth. And Andrew, I think without taking more time, I want to invite you to moderate the session for us today. Thank you, members and participants.
Thank you, Eric. Vice President, please confirm my clarity on the microphone.
You are very audible.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just 1 month away from the half of the year, and our topic today is malware analysis and forensics. And with us is one of the very prominent professionals in Uganda who's going to take us through this very wonderful session. To date, just in the first half of the year, 2024, we have had a 30% surge in malware. And just between March and May, we have a 92% increase in just a period of 3 months, a 92% increase in malware attacks. Recently, I think a week ago or a few days back, we have witnessed what happened with Microsoft and with the CrowdStrike. We all know what happened for us who are in the banking industry, for us who are in the IT industry, and also maybe to our guests who are new in the field. We had a sudden incident last week that typically drives us to this topic today. Before going further into the discussion, allow me to introduce our speaker today. Our speaker is called Mr. Julius Wakwoli. He is an information security and digital forensics practitioner with a combined background in government and academic institutions. He holds a master's degree in business administration from Manipur Academy of Higher Education, that's in India. He does hold a master's in digital forensics and information security from Gujarat in Forensic Science University, still in India. He also has a postgraduate diploma in information systems management from Uganda Management Institute, UMI. He has a bachelor's in information technology from Makerere University. Well, Mr. Julius also has very vast experience in digital forensic analysis. He has a doctorate of Director of Forensic Services from the Uganda Police Force. He's a consultant at International Business Science and Technology University, that's ISBAT, Uganda. He's also an associate consultant at Uganda Management Institute, where he actually studied this postgraduate from. Professionally, he holds certifications in one, certified cybersecurity from ISC Squared. He's a certified digital forensics examiner from MILE 2. He's a certified computer hacking forensic investigator from EC Council. He's an electronic evidence examiner, still from Gujarat Forensic Science University from India still. He's an autopsy basic and hands-on base of technology. He's a certified cyber law analyst, still from India. He's a certified cybersecurity analyst and a certified ethical hacker expert, amongst others. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 58 participants. Allow me welcome Mr. Julius to take us through our topic today. Mr. Julius, you're welcome.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for that introduction. I guess I have nothing much to add, apart from delving into why we're here. Is there anything I need to add, Andrew? Anything you want me to add before we continue?
And I don't think there is any. If all is said, we can continue, sir.
Okay. I'm going to share my slide shortly in view. Is that visible?
You could put it on presentation mode. Thank you. That's visible.
Okay. Like Andrew has already introduced me, my name is Julius, and I won't actually go into all the details that he has mentioned. That is my profile. I work with the law enforcement. I'm a police officer. Also teach at a number of universities, as it has already been mentioned. So today's topic will be malware analysis and forensics. And you've given a very good background following the just recent issue that actually happened. In fact, when it happened, I thought the first thing I thought was probably it is fileless malware, because it had all the indications of fileless malware. Fileless malware is malware that actually doesn't require an executable for it to be deposited on your hard drive. We know that traditional malware would require a particular executable to be deposited on your hard drive and probably on different conventional places on your PC. But with fileless malware, most of the indications or indicators of compromise when you've been attacked by fileless malware, one of the biggest, 90% of the indicators are that blue screen of death. So that's why I say when I saw the blue screen of death alerts almost everywhere, I thought maybe we had been hit by fileless malware. Malware by definition, of course, there are so many definitions that give us what malware is. Basically, it is a coined word, short for malicious software. This platform, I believe, has distinguished comrades who must be in the field, and I wouldn't want to bog them with basic definitions. But for those who may not be having the exact definition, probably I could put it for you. It refers to a variety of forms of hostile, intrusive, or annoying software not all software is malicious. Sometimes it can be just annoying, just to bog you down and probably put your server down, put your system down to cause unavailability. Because availability is one of the three main security principles that form the CIA triad. That is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So malicious software, in a way, comes into trying to impact on these three security principles. Usually designed with intentions, malicious intentions, to steal information, disrupt services, or gain access. Of course, when we say steal information, we look at a very important category of malware executioners when we talk about the APTs, advanced persistent threats. These are very well organized and orchestrated attacks, network-based, that really rely on very informed, very technological, and very, very good personnel to pull out information from the different organizations that have actually gotten into. They lay in wait for a very prolonged period of time before they even get to attack. So malware can be scripts. The most language used lately is Ruby on Rails. Visual Basic, we can talk of Python scripts. When you look at the Metasploit framework, most of the exploits are written. They are written in Ruby, they're written in VBS, Visual Basic scripts, and others. So it can also be an executable, a portable executable. They're usually called PEs. So everything that runs on your Windows machine is a PE, a portable executable format. They can also be library files. Okay, malware can also be library files. That is dynamic link libraries codes that are pre-written for us to be able to use for different programs to be able to use these different libraries to call out different applications for them to work intuitively with other programs. So malware can also be in form of libraries and other sorts of applications. There are a number of malwares out there, different types. I'll just run through them very quickly in the interest of time. Ransomware, that is very, very common around 2017 when we had actually the WannaCry version, which exploited the Eternal Blue vulnerability. It's a very, very stubborn malware that once it gets onto your machine, it encrypts your full disk, all the data that is on it, and you will require a decryption key for you to be able to decrypt that information after you've either made a payment or maybe made some Bitcoin to a certain wallet that you will have been given. And then we have viruses, which are basically computer programs that, when executed, replicate themselves by modifying different codes on your computer, and they're easily transferable. If I was using a USB flash, I could easily transfer a virus to another machine, just basically using that USB or flash drive. Trojan horses, these are very, very common. They're usually used to create what we call RATs, remote access Trojans. For those that may be privy to the Metasploit framework, you may realize there are hundreds and thousands of payloads that are designed to grant you a backdoor access to a command and control center. So what usually happens is someone crafts code that looks like a legitimate program, and yet it's actually doing something else. So I remember one of the games, Candy Crush, not Candy Crush, it was if I remember, I'll actually mention it. It was a game for kids that was that everyone actually wanted to play at the time, but at the back of it, it was bound with a malicious code. So whoever actually tried to install that game, they were able to install along with it malware code that granted the adversaries backdoor access unattended. And then we have the other categories ones, which spread in the presence of a network connection. They're not prevalent lately as Trojan horses and viruses on the other side. Rootkits, these are designed to gain unauthorized access to computer systems and hide their presence within your system. Keyloggers, in my routine investigation cases I've done lately, I've found keyloggers a little bit prevalent. The latest was in one of the financial institutions, and it really caused a lot of havoc in there. So a keylogger is basically that application or malicious code that is designed to keep track of each and every keystroke that you type on your computer and send whatever it is to the command and control or the person or the adversary who designed it. It can be also configured with a number of IP addresses, or what we may call sockets, a combination of an IP address and your port number for the other person to receive whatever they're intended to. Fileless malware. Fileless malware is one thing that is not often talked about so much lately, but it contributes to about 40 to 50% of the attacks actually that happen. Unlike the traditional malware that we keep, that we know that will actually take forms of someone actually social engineering you or spear phishing you, and they would want you to click on a certain link for you to be able to download a particular mutable file, a particular script, or to click on a certain link, which inadvertently downloads maybe a malicious code in the background. But the fileless malware actually doesn't take that route. It basically operates direct from memory. So someone writes out a particular script that takes advantage of availability on your PC, and then once that script gains access to your PC, it's able to piggyback itself on legitimate processes or legitimate programs. Microsoft and Windows has what we call legitimate programs or scripts or programs that are legitimate. So this fileless malware will actually piggyback itself on that legitimate application like PowerShell. There is sat.util, which is responsible for configuring your certificates on your PC. There is net.dll, one of the very important scripts that are responsible for establishing the network connectivity between your PC and your network adapter. It will also leverage on tools like PSExec, which is a very common tool that is used by system administrators to push and pull out files from their remote PCs. So these are legitimate programs that this malware thrives on. The beauty about it is that it does not leave an executable on your drive. That's actually what makes it more dangerous, because the traditional adversaries which use signatures for a file to scan for any likelihood malformed code within your system or within your programs won't be able to actually detect it, because it is piggybacking itself on a legitimate program and executing in memory. For as long as your PC is on, it will continue causing havoc. The other is the zero-click malware, another category that is often neglected. But if you're into security, you may realize that around 2017 through up to 2020, Apple, WhatsApp, I think it was around 2019. It filed a case against the NSO group, the Pegasus, which designed the NSO group, which designed a tool called Pegasus that accesses iPhone, that used to actually access iPhone iOS operating systems, and you didn't need actually to click on anything. All they needed is to exploit a vulnerability, like maybe a remote code execution, a vulnerability on Apple, and that script is sent out to your phone. And the moment you make a call or you type a text, it will actually execute itself. So you don't need to double click on any executable for it to run. Bots, on the other hand, are very, very common. They're basically automated computers that are put together, a networked computer that are put together. They're usually referred to as zombies, okay? They are controlled by a certain software, which you normally refer to as a command and control. So these bots are just organized, and they're usually used to send out a lot of bogus traffic to very strong servers to render them either unavailable or useless at that time. Then we have spyware, which are basically a software designed to gather information from your device. I see a lot of links going up and about on WhatsApp links, on social media platforms, and many of them actually are spywares, because they will in the background keep tracking usage of your phone, whatever you're actually doing, without your consent, and they will send that information to the crafter of that particular spyware. And then the other category is scareware. When you look at down here where there's warning viruses detected, that's an example of a scareware. Oftentimes people are on the internet, and then as you're going up and about on the internet, you just see a message, maybe at your bottom right corner, telling you how your PC is running low on storage, or it is there's a sign of a virus on your PC, so you need to click on a particular button for you to be able to scan your PC. So they are creating that urgency that there's a problem with your PC, but yet in reality, you're going that action of clicking on maybe scan or download, you're basically installing malware. Then we have spam sending malware, which typically target your mailboxes, especially servers, and then send out very many spoofed, or what you may call spam mails to different people out there. Then the other final category is downloader. This usually is a type of malware that is designed to download and install additional malicious software into a component system. So what usually these do is, once they get into your system, any other malware actually that comes in, they'll create a leeway for other malware actually to get into. So they are more like handlers for different malware. All these form what we call the malware families. Malware has different components. There's what we call the payload, which is the actual code or the actual data that cause the havoc on your PCs. And then we have what we call the packer. Now that packer is just a small component that wraps up that entire payload and your entire code and compresses the code such that in the event that this particular payload, this particular malware has been sent to a certain PC, chances are maybe 99% that your antivirus that you have won't be able to access it. So they usually encrypt the payload and compress that payload. So a payload that had maybe about 5 MB of data, you will have something to do with maybe 1 MB. It's rare to find actually malware that is more than 5 MB. Usually malware is less than 5 MB. If you found any that is much bigger, it means it has been crafted with a lot of link libraries, core libraries that self-build. So it may not require to maybe import or export out any libraries for it to work. Every malware is crafted with what we call the persistence mechanisms. The ultimate goal of a malware writer or a malware coder is to ensure that even when your machine is restarted, I will still have persistence. Okay, I've exploited a vulnerability on your system. I've been able to access your system. So how am I able to maintain that persistence within your system, even if you rebooted your computer? So that's what we call persistence mechanisms. It's one of the components of malware. Usually attackers write code that is going to make changes to your registry. The registry is made up of a different number of keys. There are specifically 5. But each of those hives has what we call keys and subkeys. So there is a particular key in your registry, the user initialization.exe file, that someone can actually make changes to, such that they don't require you to keep double clicking on that download you've downloaded from your email, or if they've social engineered you, you've clicked on the link. So for this time, they will only need to do a social engineering you or spearfish you only once. And then once they've gained access, they will maintain that persistence through putting that executable file in one of the registry keys, or they will make changes to your startup folder. Many of us actually don't pay attention to the startup files that are within our Windows machines, because everything actually in your startup folder means that whenever your PC actually restarted, every application within there has to start by default. So if I were a malware writer, I would definitely put my malware code into that setup file, that setup folder, and I should be able to have unattended access without your interaction. The other component is the communication, what we call the CNC. This is very common for remote access trojans, or what we may call backdoors. So after you've infiltrated someone's system or someone's network, you now need to have access. So how are you going to bind, or how are you going to create that reverse shell, or that bind shell, for me to be able to access and exfiltrate data from that system that I've been able to compromise? The other is propagation. When we talk about propagation, we're talking about lateral movement. The malware has been installed into your network, into your PC. So this malware has to have a mechanism of being able to leave one PC, hop from one PC to another. Okay, and if you've not segmented your network very well, it means it will be very easy for that for that malware to skip from one network segment to another subnet somewhere, probably from a segment that is housing maybe users, basic users or standard users in an organization, to a segment that houses your critical infrastructure, like your servers, your domain controllers, and things like that. So how does this malware propagate? And usually this malware is crafted along with what we call the polymorphic engines, or metamorphism. It's able to morph as it keeps attacking other machines. Say maybe user 1 has been infected by this malware, and then user 2 will also be infected. But what happens is the polymorphic engine will create a different signature for this malware, which now makes it very complicated for it to be detected. Remember, it's the same virus, but with 2 different signatures. So if that signature for the first attack on the first PC was updated within your antivirus database, chances are you may not actually get it on the second, third, and fourth machines, because it keeps on morphing, it keeps on changing. And as it is changing its code, it is changing its virus signature. Then we have armoring. So somehow malware has to be created with kind of a self-defense mechanism. Most malware actually can know that it's maybe being analyzed, and it will actually give you wrong results. Sometimes as it is moving, it will actually notice, okay, I think in a sandbox, so it won't actually execute the necessary functions that as required. Sometimes if it also notices that it is being debugged, it will do what we call a self-destruction. So that self-destruction is also some kind of armoring. And then we have the stealth. Of course, when we talk about the packers, the obfuscation, metamorphism, it's one way of hiding itself. Malware is designed with code to ensure that it's kind of hidden from the normal anti-malware solutions that you could be having, or the normal program that you have in there. A typical malware life cycle would be something like that. This is a basic one from a spear phishing point of view, where you send an email, which is a very common thing, even for the most technical cybersecurity enthusiasts or practitioners out there. They usually fall prey to some of the things. So someone sends you a mail, it has an attachment, or it could be having just a link, you click on it. The action of clicking on that link maybe directs you to a certain malicious website, and then that malicious website exploits a certain client-side vulnerability, which could be maybe a cross-site scripting vulnerability, or a CRS, cross-site request site forgery. And then once once those vulnerabilities have been exploited, a drive-by download will actually happen. So a drive-by download is just that download actually that happens in the background. You won't actually even see it actually happening, because you only just visited a malicious website. There are over 3 million websites that are malicious intentionally. They are designed intentionally to be malicious, to be a conduit for malware. So as you're hovering onto the internet, you may come across one. By just simply clicking anywhere on that website, you're able to download a malicious payload that could be disastrous for your network. The sophisticated malware, which is it follows actually a number of stages. If I remember, there is one of the most discussed kind of a cyber attack. It's usually referred to as the cyber heist, the one of Bangladesh, Bank of Bangladesh, where an attack actually was able to exploit a certain vulnerability within the bank, and they were able to make off with a lot of money. It is one of the biggest cyber heists in the world. It actually happened around, I think, 2016. So a malware writer designs a framework for spreading that malware, because it all starts with writing your malware. And then the attacker distributes that malware for targeted infections. And then once the user is coerced to visit a malicious domain, the embedded code exploits a download malware using drive-by download attack. Ideally, the mechanisms are usually the same, but the sophistication comes in when there are a number of controls that have been put in within an organization. So sometimes you may send, say, a phishing link, and then your bait actually fails to take it. Or you may send a file, your bait still fails to take it. So what do? You could use a USB. You can weaponize a USB and then probably send it physically to the organization. Probably one excited user will pick that USB, which is maybe auto-run. The moment they put it in the PC, you already have the metaprinter, or what we may call the shell, on the other side, and you have the backdoor access. So attacker receives the credentials from a CNC server or a command and control, and then an attacker initiates this stealthy connection using compromised proxy servers. The reason they use the proxy servers is to hide their identity, because a proxy will usually hide your identity and give you probably even a spoofed IP address, which can be recorded on the firewall on the other side. And then after the victim's bank account is accessed through a compromised proxy server, and then money is transferred to mules. These mules are basically agents that usually receive money on fake accounts, and then having received that money, those accounts will be either closed down, or you'll never actually be able to trace back to that. So this is a typical sophisticated kind of malware attack through the life cycle. Some of the symptoms of malware. Oftentimes, you'll find system administrators, network administrators actually not paying attention to their domain controllers. The domain controller is the heart of the organization. So as an adversary, it will be rare for me to actually even use an existing account. So having infiltrated into your network, the first thing I will do is escalate my privileges and probably go into your domain controller. I go into your organization units. I create myself as an object, maybe as a user within there, grant myself privileges, administrative privileges, which I will be able to leverage over time. And I've found this in most of my investigations that I've done. And you'll often find 2 or 3 user accounts on the domain controller, because it's one of the places most system administrators, more network administrators, server managers will hardly check. But once you do that, once you keep checking your user accounts, you'll find one that doesn't even make sense to you. And then we have appearance of strange files. You'll oftentimes start having files that don't make sense to you, files that you don't remember installing, programs you don't remember installing. Many of us hardly even check our program, our control panel to see what programs actually installed. So if you have a malware running and it is it's a file-based malware, chances are it will have a process that it will have created within your startup folder. And also you may find it created within your programs, the list of your programs that are installed on your PC. And then you'll also have desktop icons that don't make sense. Programs that are running, turning off, and reconfiguring files. Malware writers, of course, would want to try to limit the chances of being caught. The first thing that they'll do is to try to attempt and turn off your antivirus. Sometimes they do this in silent mode. Windows, like I said earlier, it has a number of tools like the WMIC, the Windows Management Instrumentation Command, which you can use to even install and uninstall a program silently without actually even someone actually knowing that it's being installed. I can still write a small script with netsh, firewall, set operation mode, and maybe firewall disable, and it will disable that firewall in a silent mode. You won't be able to realize. So the reason I'm disabling that is for me to have that unattended access. So chances are, if you do not keep looking through your firewall rules, keep looking at your antivirus solutions, you may have been deactivated without knowing. Suspicious network activities, file changes, database changes, abnormal access patterns. Abnormal access patterns is usually with APTs, for example. In most cases, if an APT has been successful, they will do the exfiltration of data because they will have studied your access patterns on your network bandwidth. So they know probably between midnight to 4 o'clock or to 6, the network is usually unused. So they would want to use that bandwidth to exfiltrate data from your servers or from your systems or from your network to the command and control. So if you realize, if you came into your organization in the morning and you did a small performance monitoring, and you look into your bandwidth usage, your CPU utilization parameters, you look into your memory utilization, and you realize there is some extreme bandwidth consumption within a particular period of time, you realize you under attack of maybe a backdoor, and someone is trying to do that. Increased memory and CPU usage, that is very, very common. And one way on how to actually do that is you can even use the simple performance monitor on your PCs. Even your task manager is a very good friend that you can actually use. Sometimes you can be there when you have nothing running on your PC, but you realize your CPU utilization is the spikes are high. Your memory is being chewed up. Of course, there are applications like your Google Chrome that would consume a lot of bandwidth if you have so many tabs open. Usually it's within, if you have more than 50 tabs open, you can have about 8 GB being allocated to only Google Chrome, and the rest will actually share the other RAM. Of course, if you have malware infected on your PC will be a little bit slower. Your browsers won't be able to open. That's why actually Google usually sends you um, updates for your browsers. Many of us usually ignore them or procrastinate updating. Modified or deleted files, you'll actually find files that have been modified and deleted over time on your PC and deleted. Some one of the other symptoms that is actually not highlighted here is files or folders that have modified MAC timestamps. What I mean is if you checked a file whose modified access and created timestamps have been modified, then you know you're under an attack. And then the other is a file whose attributes have actually been also modified. You can actually create malware, and then one of the attributes you hide it. So you can hide it such that it is not actually viewed by anyone on the PC, apart from maybe your malware solutions or anti-malware solutions can be able to do that. Then you have unknown pop-ups, emails that are sent automatically without user knowledge, and others. So how does malware get into your system? Email attachments, social engineering, phishing, drive-by, most of these I've actually explained. Pirated software, it's a very common conduit. Most of the software that is actually designed out there is designed with they bind it with malicious code, because Microsoft actually designs their Office product, puts it out there, and what the reverse engineers will do is just to go reverse engineer that product and remove the product key element. But as they're doing to remove, they're trying to remove that product key code, they can within there include a malicious code, in that whenever you're trying to install this malware, this Office application on your PC, it along with it installs that malformed code. Infected removable media, this is a very common. Don't just pick removable media or flash drives and then just put them there. Software vulnerabilities, this is a very common. An example is what just actually happened recently with CrowdStrike. Though they say it was a bug, but of course there must have been some vulnerability that exploited. When I looked at one of the code that actually did, it was I think a buffer overflow. It failed to write code. It actually wrote code, and that particular buffer got full, and the memory shifted to other adjacent storages, and that's why we're able to get, for those pieces actually that got hit, we're able to get that that kind of reaction. Social media and messaging apps, that's WhatsApp and others, where people actually are getting a lot of account takeovers. Peer-to-peer networks, these are very common with free applications. Exploit kits, there are very many exploit kits that are written. An example of a very good database with free exploits, ExploitDB. For those who are using Kali, you can also use Metasploitable. It is a framework with so many exploit kits that have been pre-written that you can use to access or to exploit vulnerabilities on systems. It can take anyone with good skills to hack into a Windows 7 machine that has not been patched, because Windows 7 inherently has that eternal blue. It has that eternal blue vulnerability. So if you've not downloaded a patch to patch it up, chances are you'll be hit less than 5 minutes. Someone will actually have your entire PC and your entire network through that kind of vulnerability. Waterhole attacks, zero-day exploits, man-in-the-middle attacks, insider threats. Insider threats is a very big thing, though most people usually want to refer it to. Okay, I was just reading a text from Okelo. I think I'll respond to some of the questions probably later in the QA section. Insider threats common with within a very organization. Some of them are hostile employees. Some of them are people who have already left because they have the inside knowledge of the organization and the entire blueprints of the organization and things like that. But insider threats are not usually the bad guys. They can be actually a good guy, but who has failed maybe to enforce the basic security policies. For example, password policy. They tell you do not write your passwords maybe on sticky notes, put it below your keyboard, and then someone actually goes ahead and does that. So somehow he has inadvertently become an insider threat, not intentionally, but because he was a bit lazy with maybe trying to grasp their password because it is longer. I happen to hint on fileless malware, but maybe just a summary on that. This happens without the need of executable, traditional executable files stored on the drives. Like I said, these leverage on your RAM. They are based in RAM. For as long as the machine is still running, up and running, fileless malware will still create that havoc. So in the event that maybe you restart your PC, chances are, if persistence has not been created, maybe they have not overwritten your registry keys, they have not maybe embedded themselves on certain legitimate programs within your system, their chances are you may not actually have it actually returning after a reboot. So most of these fileless malwares are stealth. Like I said, they take advantage of inherently built or legitimate applications or scripts or programs that are within the Windows. And Windows has a number of these programs. I just mentioned a few of them. PowerShell, exec, PS exec, net.exe, the CS script, CSC, certutil, run DLL. These are some of the legitimate scripts or legitimate programs that are leveraged by fileless malware because it does not live inexecutable on your machine. They're actually very, very dangerous. And like I said at the beginning, if your machine usually gets blue screens of death often, you should check out your machine for a likelihood of some kind of fileless malware. They use a technique we refer to as living off the land binary. It's basically using legitimate tools, legitimate applications, legitimate programs that are built within the Windows platform to execute their actions there. So how do we mitigate and protect against malware? Anti-malware solutions, regular updates, email security. Email security is very crucial. Your email system has about 3 authentication procedures. There's what we call a DMARC. There's what we call the DKIM, domain key identity manager, and then the SPF. So usually when you run your email header in any header analyzing tool, there of course there are those online tools that you can use to analyze your email headers, and then there are also offline tools that you can actually use to verify your email header if they passed that SPF and DKIM authentication procedures. Firewalls, having a firewall and configuring the right rules. User training actually contributes to about 90% of the reasons as to why we should actually exist in the cyber ecosystem. Network security and segmentation, this is very good because it prevents lateral movement within an organization. It is always good to have different subnets for each and every critical infrastructure. If you have a subnet for servers, you should also have a subnet maybe for different users, a subnet for different departments to avoid that lateral movement when you've been infected. Yes, Rona, I don't know if it's right for me to take. And yes, I see your hand raised up.
Julius, you will take the questions after the presentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The other thing is backing up regularly. Of course, backing up regularly comes along with ensuring that you test these backups, because you could have backed up a malware maybe 2 days ago, and as you continue backing up, you're backing up the same malware. So in the event that you have maybe an unfortunate incident a week later, you could actually restore to backups that are already infected. So it's always better to test once in a while your backups. Application of the least privilege principle, this actually prevents what we call privilege escalation. Okay, so once an attack actually gets into your system, for as long as the users are all maybe standard users, it will be harder for maybe the attacker to escalate their privileges and access maybe critical infrastructure that is housing more pertinent data. The other is application whitelisting. I've found this actually a lot in organizations. You will realize that when we whitelist applications, it means we definitely are barring certain applications from being executed on your system. Okay, not everyone should be able to execute or to run or have privileges to run and execute applications within organizations. These applications can be executables, they can be DLL files, they can be scripts, they can be anything. So once you apply these allow lists, sometimes they refer to allow lists, application allow lists. So they should be able to do that. Behavioral analysis, very, very important. It is very, very good to always ensure that you record patterns of your network bandwidth when you receive the spikes, how maybe your server is actually behaving performance-wise, even when there are not so many requests, but it seems to be having a higher CPU utilization. So it's always better to try and carry out a behavioral analysis. Patch management. Every application will always have vulnerabilities. Every application will always have bugs. CrowdStrike has been known from time immemorial to be one of those organizations that are more of they look for security flaws and then try to advise in that regard. But again, they caused an issue which actually I think will go down as one of the biggest cyber issue maybe in this generation. Multi-factor authentication, very, very common, very, very crucial. This goes along with what we call the privileged access monitoring. So it is very, very crucial for you to keep monitoring users who have elevated privileges, their actions. You monitor what are they doing. Julius logged in at 2. What did they do? They maybe installed or they stopped Kaspersky. Why did they stop Kaspersky? Probably there's an application they were trying to install. What is that application? So that privileged access monitoring is very, very crucial because it also prevents people from installing malware, and then also it creates comfort for you, the admin, to know that because there's what we call non-predation. Someone actually can install something and then say my account was actually hacked into. It was hacked into, it wasn't me. But now here you have a PAM system whereby they're able to log in. On logging in, they're given maybe an OTP on their phone, and they're able to enter that into the system to gain rightful access. The other is threat intelligence. Most organizations actually have what we call the blue teams. One of their roles, and the white teams, one of their roles is to ensure that they research into the latest malwares that are out there, and then try to understand the different families, because malware also has different taxonomies and nomenclatures. So understand them, and then once you've got maybe a particular threat, you can always report it, maybe through the mitre.org. You can move to the NIST vulnerability databases, exploit DBs, and some of those other organizations that are able to include these different threats and vulnerabilities that have been identified, such that maybe their patches are designed and then rolled out. Regular scanning. Scanning your system is very paramount because there are viruses or worms that will stay even within your system. Like we looked at one of the components of the virus being stealth and being able to self-destruct itself. So if a virus which has been very well coded and given that good packer, packed very well to encrypt its code, you may not be able to see it if your antivirus is not updated. Vendor security is very important because we often work with third parties. So you never know what a third party is actually bringing into your organization and things like that. So it's always better to ensure that these third parties, whatever they're bringing into an organization, it could be an issue of a supply chain attack. Probably they're bringing in a system that already has malware code within its firmware. So if you don't conduct what you call a vendor security assessment on that tool, you'll never know whether that tool, that device that is being brought in by this third party into your organization is having maybe an exploit that can be exploited. Then continuous monitoring. This is through your logs. It could be the server. It could be your SIEM solutions. It could be your EDRs, endpoint data detection and recovery systems. Maybe SIEM solutions, could be your syslog server, because most of them will always give you and will always send you alerts if they ever find any kind of malware code within the packets that are getting into your network. Malware analysis and forensics involves investigating and analyzing software to comprehend its behavior. One of the reasons we carry out malware analysis is to understand how malware actually behaves, and then the reason why it was written, the impact it has on the system, and also try to come up with signatures that we can update into our virus database signatures for our anti-malware solutions that we could be having. So it is very, very important for us to always ensure that we carry out malware analysis, especially for the red and blue teams, to identify those new malware such that their signatures can be added into an antivirus and they can cease to be destructive. The goal is of analyzing such malware is to determine exactly what that binary does. Because when you reverse engineer binary, that particular malware, you want to know what exactly it does. How does it work? What functions does it call? What libraries does it export? What libraries does it import? What IP addresses is it communicating to? Because all that information is usually embedded within that code. Okay, and then how do you detect it? How do you measure the damage, hence enabling better defense mechanism with similar threats? There are two fundamental approaches to malware analysis. The first is what we call the static analysis, and then the other is the dynamic analysis. Static analysis is basically the basic analysis that you do. It doesn't require a lot of knowledge, but it gives you information that can help you understand whether this particular malware was packed. If it is packed, which packer was used to pack it, to obfuscate it or to encrypt it. It will actually tell you if the IP addresses that this malware is communicating with, which socket is actually binding onto, which ports it's listening to, probably even the strings, the different strings that were used to come up with this malware. All that information you can get with static analysis. Whereas dynamic analysis is a little bit rigorous. It would require an expert if you've used tools like tools for reverse engineering and debugging, as opposed to static analysis. Static analysis, you're basically looking at that malware, its code, understanding it, but you're not running it. You're basically putting that malicious code into certain tools for you to be able to get visibility over a few things like strings, the functions, the different headers, sometimes even IP addresses and things like that. But when we conduct what we call a dynamic malware analysis, here we are running the malware, because now we want to know what exactly this malware is doing. Okay, so with static, you don't need to have, you don't need to run or analyze this malware in a controlled environment. A controlled environment can be a sandbox or a virtual machine that you have. But with dynamic analysis, because you're going to be using reverse engineering tools, debugging tools. These debugging tools actually get beyond that abstraction layer between your hypervisor and then your operating system, and they will be able to communicate even with memory, because with a debugging tool, it is actually accessing even low level platforms. So that means you must actually run this malware in a controlled environment, or what we may call a virtual box, or you can set up a sandbox. There are so many sandboxes out there, as we shall see later, that you can use. Some are free, some are not free. So these sandboxes are able to give you a lot of stuff that this malware actually does. So it works with new types of malware, detects malware behavior based on its behavior and traits, and produces signatures. Because the ultimate goal of analyzing malware is to get signatures. Once you've gotten those signatures, you can add them in your antivirus solution, your anti-malware solutions, such that if in the event that you have a repeated occurrence of the same virus, it's able to be noticed because you've updated your signatures. So this is achieved through running that malware and observing its behavior. Because when you run that malware in a disassembler like IDA Pro, or a debugger like Immunity Debugger or Ghidra, it should be able to show you how that malware actually exactly works. So from the moment you double click on it to execute it, there are files that it will drop, or what we call writing files on your system. There are registry changes that it will make. Like I said earlier, for persistence, there are keys that will be changed in your registry with just that execution of that particular malicious code. API calls are the functions or programs that this malware actually can either import or export, because no one actually designs a complete package. Even these applications that we use, or the normal applications that we use on our PCs, Notepad and others, they usually have what we call an import and an export section, which houses the dynamic link libraries or core libraries, which can always be exported or imported depending on what you need to use that application for. So no application there are a few applications that are designed with a self-containment, in that self-containment posture, but most of them usually rely on already pre-written functions within your operating system. You'll also be able to see which processes this malware is actually creating. You'll also be able to see which sockets it's creating. A socket, like I said earlier, is a combination of your IP address and your port number. So you should be able to see how it is binding onto your machine back to the command and control center, the person actually who is getting or exfiltrating your info. Where does malware hide? Most of the things I've actually highlighted on them, but the most crucial part is the registry. Registry, by definition, is that small database on your computer. Initially, Microsoft, before 1995, Microsoft used to, every application or every file on your computer used to have its own file, which we used to refer to as the INI files. So every file used to store its own configuration files for itself somewhere on your PC. But because every file needed, if you wanted to open an Office document, it would have to look for that INI file from the PC for it to be able to open. So most of these INI files were in disparate areas. They were not in one place. So somehow Microsoft had to come up with a way of coming up with that database of settings, which we now refer to as a registry. Now that registry has a number of hives. There are about 5 hives. Each hive has its own responsibility. But one of the biggest hives that are usually manipulated by malware hackers is the HKey local machine, because it is where all your hardware settings, including your drivers, including your softwares, are stored. So if I were a malware writer, I would actually leverage on your registry to make changes in there. I would just go to one of your keys, as I will show you maybe towards the end, one of the keys, make a change to that key, and I'll need to create persistence. Whenever your PC is starting, it starts along with that malware. The other part is the startup folder. Like I said at the beginning, once in a while, always check your startup folders. And not just checking them, because some of my malware, their attributes, their file attributes are usually hidden. So you go and unhide the file attributes by going to that options, the three dots up there, and then view, and then you change. You should be able to view the different hidden attributes for hidden files within that particular folder. So malware actually leverages on these two files a lot. And then the other is a host file. The host file resides within your etc directory on your PC. Now, in your host file, chances are you'll find an IP address. They're usually two by default. There are two. One, I think, starts with 103. The other one starts with 33, something like that. But then if you find more IP addresses, chances are your machine is communicating to another machine somewhere that you don't know. So this host file is a very, very crucial file for you to always look at once in a while. If you find there an IP address with its corresponding host name, chances are someone is accessing your, because in that host file is where you bind communication from your PC back to the command and control. The other is the restore data. Restore data or restore files. Basically, when you create a restore file or restore data, you're basically creating a snapshot or a state of your PC. But sometimes most of the antivirus solutions are unable to actually scan to sift through most of these restore data because it is in different format. Many of them, not all, but many of them won't be able to actually scan it through that restore data. So malware can hide itself in the restore files on your machine because these are files that you don't use quite often. And the people who write these malwares know that the restore file, restore data on your PC is one that is not often visited all the time. The other is macros. Windows has what we call macros. These are basically automated programs, usually built in VBS, that actually help us automate different actions, whatever we need. Maybe if you're using Access or you're using Excel, you should be able to automate some of the processes. So some of these macros are leveraged by most of this malware to hide in there and maybe execute code inadvertently. Screensavers, web pages, and even presentations. These normal presentations because they also have macros inbuilt. So how do I identify malware? When you're carrying out what we call a malware forensics, then there are a number of things that you're going to do. For you to be able to sift through all the information and then look for that malware, there are three ways. There's what we call a dead system, which means you're basically analyzing a system that is off. So what that means is I'm going to get out a hard drive and then put it on maybe a forensic workstation. I should be able to image that drive, and then I will load that image into a sandboxed environment. Or a virtualized environment. I should be able to look through that image and maybe find different artifacts that speak to malware. And then the live system analysis, which of course is considered as a surgery. You'll find a PC that is on, probably it's networked, and the first thing that you do is to disconnect it and isolate it off the network. So as you're trying to, if it's not a ransomware, that is, you'll need to also use a number of tools and then try to identify where that malware is, carry out some search. You can do a scan, and if you're lucky, your antivirus, if it has the latest virus definitions, it should be able to catch it. And once you catch it, you should be able now to analyze that malware and then try to find out what exactly it was doing and things like that. So identifying malware, I think most of the things we talked about them, but one other area that you can always look at is the task scheduler, all the scheduled tasks. Okay. Then also the examine network connections. When you use a simple tool like netstart, you just go to your command prompt and then you type netstart Then it has also the different flags in there that you can use. Maybe nestat A, nestat AN. It should be able to tell you which applications are running, which ports have been opened, which IP addresses your PC is connecting to, and even if your machine is a victim to a denial of service attack, it should actually show you under the established connections. It should actually show you a SYN flag. All denial. If you ever type netstat /netstat-an and you see SYN messages on that black screen, you are a victim of a denial of service attack. Examine logs, user accounts, file system, and register changes. These we've already talked about. So what are the techniques and tools that we use to look into this malware? As we talked about static analysis tools or static analysis, we say this analysis that is conducted without you running the software. So these are some of the tools. They're not exhaustive, but these are some of the tools that you can use to conduct a basic static analysis on basic malware. I think we shall have a small segment of practical, which I'll show you maybe a number of them, how you can actually be able to use them. Then dynamic analysis tools, like I said, most of them, reverse engineering, and they're disassemblers. So they are going to dissect that code and that particular malware. I should be able to see the functions, I should be able to see the logic flow, the entry points, the breakpoints for all that malware. So Githra is one tool that was being used, I think, with NSA, National Security Agency, until 2020, but it was decommissioned and it's now open source. It is actually, I put it number one for a reason. So it is the number one debugging tool, reverse engineering tool for any, it doesn't have to be malware. It can be a reverse engineering tool for any PE or any application that you need, but it's a very good tool for reverse engineering. IDA Pro is a disassembler. It's a disassembler. It disassembles code. So you can use these tools to be able to gain visibility into what this particular malware is doing. What functions is it calling? What processes is it hooking itself to? Because some malware has a habit of hooking itself onto legitimate processes. You could be having a word application that is running, but malware comes and piggybacks itself on that legitimate Office program. So all those you should be able to see when you're running this dynamic analysis tool. And then on the other side, we have what we call the sandboxes. These sandboxes about, I think, all of them are free apart from Joe Sandbox. The rest should be free. Not entirely free, but the best one I love using most is any.run. It gives you you have a complete Windows environment, and then you execute that malware within that environment. Of course, it has created that layer of abstraction between your machine, your host machine, and your virtual environment. So malware is unable actually to skip from the virtual machine or from the sandbox to your PC. So these are sandboxes that you can actually use. Most of them are free. VirusTotal is free. INetSim is a simulator. It simulates internet services. Because remember, I said if you remember our components for malware, there is that part which we looked at self-armoring, self-defense mechanism. So malware being able to detect that I'm not being run on a live environment. So if the malware that you're going to analyze, say maybe it's a backdoor, you should be able to use INetSim because it simulates an environment that has internet connectivity. So it provides you those services. So once you execute that malware, it should be able to have a feel that, okay, I think this should be an actual environment because I have internet, I'm able to access this, but all those are simulations. So Cuckoo is also a sandbox that you can configure. Cuckoo is free. You can actually configure it on your PCs. On my top left, that is actually how any any.run looks like. Like I said, it's one of my best tools that I use a lot when I'm doing analysis that I require to do very fast, because it will give me most of the things that I need. On my top left, top right, that is IDA Pro. That's actually how it looks. So it breaks down, as you can see, all these. It's trying to it have different sections: the code, the different libraries, the breakpoints, the instruction pointers of your PC. Remember, a disassembler and debuggers will always interact with your CPU. So you're going to have registers actually appearing here, EX and others, EDX, all those registers will be appearing there because it is running that malware. So it has to appear like it is being executed in an actual environment. So that is why it is very risky to run these dynamic analysis using the dynamic analysis tools like IDA Pro, Immunity Debugger, Githra on an actual system, because you risk infecting your PC. On my bottom, I have a CFF, which and then VirusTotal in the middle here. All these are for basically the basic or static analysis, malware analysis that we can do. While you're conducting your malware analysis, you will oftentimes collect RAM. There's what we call memory forensics or RAM forensics. So many of the things that that malware is doing within your computer are basically into RAM, because everything that your computer is actually using at that moment, at that particular moment, including the notepad application that you have, this presentation I'm having, the office document that I've opened, everything, the solitaire I'm playing, the Candy Crush, everything is running in memory. So the first thing that you do, even if it's a malware related case, is to dump memory, because memory will always have information that is rich, because in there you'll have IP addresses that this malware is trying to communicate with. In there you'll have processes that are running and those that have been terminated by the malware. You'll have even visibility on what commands was, maybe if it was a backdoor and someone was actually accessing your PC at that very moment, you should be able actually to see the command line arguments or the commands that he has been able to type in plain text. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll even find passwords which are still in plain text, because that particular medium at that time is not encrypted and the password is already given. So the encryption in a disk, if it's fully disk encryption, it will always work if the machine is either restarted. That's when your disk will actually be encrypted. Until you provide that password, it will be able to decrypt that drive. So everything actually that you're using at that time is resident in memory and can be accessed if you use very good tools like Volatility, a good tool like Autopsy, a GUI graphical user interface tool that can be able to give you visibility on what was running at the time you collected that RAM. While you're collecting memory, these are some of the things that you'll actually pick. If your computer had been infected by a certain malware, and probably at that time you noticed someone was exfiltrating your data, so you should be able to see which open TCP ports are open, the active connected connections, the different plugins that you can use to be able to see that. The executables, they will all be in RAM. All this information will all be resident in RAM, including the clipboard data, the passwords, the typed commands, web addresses, the sockets that someone is trying to put, and then including even the temporary data. Okay, even the temporary data will all be there. So below there on your bottom right, you'll see some of the tools that you can use for RAM forensics. For those that may not have used them, there's what we call Belkasoft RAM Capture. Then there's FTK, which is a very good tool for creating the first three, Dump It, FTK, and Belkasoft, are used to create a copy of your RAM, to dump RAM. And then the last one, which is Lime, is used in Linux. But for Lime, you'll have to create a different kernel. You must actually have to, you should have to create a different program which you're going to now to get into this Linux machine that you want to, it's a whole long process. It's not as easy as these other ones. These ones are as good as just typing, clicking next for the Windows. But for the Linux, you have to build the kernel version of that similar machine. You must actually have a similar machine with the same kernel version. You first build the different plugins before you can install it in there. And then the analysis tools are on the right-hand side. We have volatility, autopsy, and recall. These ones are for acquisition, Belkasoft, FTK, Dumpit, Line. They are to acquire or to create a RAM image. And then on my right, we have volatility, autopsy, and recall, which are for analyzing that image that you've created. So those go hand in hand, and it is how we get to create your RAM dumps. And the RAM dumps, like I said, it's rich with a lot of information. And finally, what are some of the challenges? Some of the challenges I've hinted on them. Of course, most malware, as you're analyzing malware, most malware is able to detect that it is running in a virtual machine. Oftentimes, there are when you're running malware, maybe in Oracle, it should be able to actually tell that this is an Oracle machine, because an Oracle machine will also have its own it will have its own physical address, which is not the same as your PCs. And Oracle, if you're running an Oracle machine, the default MAC address will always start, I think, with 08:00:27. By default, all of them, they will never have different. And then if you're running your malware in VMware, the default will always be 00-C0C-29. So malware writers know about this, so they're able to write malware that is going to conceal its actual behavior from you. It will actually give you something different. Okay, and then some malware will execute different when running virtual machine to make life difficult for malware analysts. The most common parameters checked by malware are registry keys. Of course, it will go and check the registry key. And if you're running this malware in a virtual machine, that machine should have a key within its registry, which is pointing to VirtualBox guest additions, if it is a VM, if it's an Oracle virtual machine. Or you'll have a VBox underscore for VMware. So they're able to tell that, oh, there is I think I'm running on a virtual machine because I'm seeing registry keys that match to virtual machines. And that way they will actually conceal, it will actually execute its stealth and armor components, and you won't be able to find anything. So there is also evasion techniques like encryption, obfuscation, encoding, and then the use of packers, which I've already talked about. So you can pack malware, you can obfuscate it, you can encrypt it, you can encode it to make it much more harder for your anti-malware solutions to be able to scan it out. And then the other is time and effort. These reverse engineering tools take a lot of time. Okay, it take a lot of time, because by you loading it in a reverse engineering tool, you won't get the answers immediately. You must actually have the understanding of the logic flow of some of those functions that you're seeing, the link libraries, the processes, how it creates those processes and all that. And then the other is a technical scope. Of course, many times you're working under a smaller scope, and your bosses or your if you're an analyst, for example, and you report to someone, they may not actually understand the need for an extensive analysis for that matter. Andrew, I know I've been a little bit fast running through because we had a little time.
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
around.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much, Julius, for that intense presentation that you've shared. There's a lot of upload on the chat section, and also I think people have been so attentive. We have so many questions. Key takeaways for those who are in the field and for those who are not in the field. They say set a thief to catch a thief. So for us to actually understand the dynamics to be able to protect our systems, we should have the tips, we should have the knowledge of malware analysis. Besides that, let us go direct to the Q&A. We shall have 7 minutes for Q&A since we have spent a lot of time in the presentation. Allow me go first the Q&A, then we also have others in the chat. Dale Gracious Okello says, with the incident of CrowdStrike, this begs the question of how long you should test an update before rolling it out the core system. So I think this one is asking basically how long should we test for an update before we actually roll it out. We could take on that in a few minutes, then few seconds, then we continue the next question.
How long? Oh, how long depends, because of course there are sessions where people say they didn't actually do enough UAT, user acceptance tests, or maybe before rolling out to the production environment. But how long also depends on your team, because I could have an application or an update that I need to roll out, and I do 3-4 tests, maybe fuzz testing, unit testing, and all those different tests, and they're all okay for maybe a week, and I roll out, and I won't have any problem, because I rollouts with usually 2 weeks should be enough for a serious update for critical infrastructure to be tested, depending also on the number of APIs, because you could be having a system that only speaks to itself. You could be having a system that's going to be integrated with other systems. So the time also matters. So I've seen organizations that have done system tests on UATs for maybe a month. Others have done for a week. Others have done for 2, and they have not had any issues. But it also depends, I think, on the magnitude, on the size of the application you're trying to roll out, and the system that it speaks to. Because if you're going to push out an update that is going to run on several machines that actually integrate with other different systems, I think it will be prudent for you to give it a lot more time. 1 month should have sufficed. But I think for the case of CrowdStrike, I'm not so certain, but most of the literature I've read, they say they didn't give it a lot of attention. Probably someone thought this is the usual. Okay, maybe they thought it's the usual, so they didn't give it more attention for the rollout. But 2 weeks should suffice for any rollout, for an update to be done.
Okay, thank you. From an anonymous attendee, can multi-factor authentication be bypassed? And if so, how can these vulnerabilities be addressed?
Multi-factor authentication is in different ways. For example, you could think of a multi-factor authentication that maybe relates to 2 systems. I have maybe one system, the system I'm logging into, and then it's going to send me an OTP on my phone. Now, in the event that I don't have my phone with me, probably a session could be hijacked in between that. If it's an email, for example, if maybe I'm not using my phone, I'm supposed to receive an email, there could be a man in the middle. From an abstract point of view, there could be a man in the middle who gets that session, hijacks that session, and is able to spoof that session and can be able to get that code, and probably. But that is usually for systems that are using probably self-signed certificates or expired certificates, or they have not implemented any serious encryption technologies like TLS on their systems. But by and large, they shouldn't be bypassed if you have your gadget with you. the multi-factor authentication, if the other level of authentication is the OTP is going to be received on your phone, and you have your phone, it is a little bit hard to hijack that unless your phone has been cloned, because there are cases where people's phones have been cloned, and probably you have your phone has been bugged with a small backdoor or maybe a small bug, and someone actually has visibility over your entire phone. That is the only way I think they can actually get into your phone and bypass that MFA. But MFA, by and large, it's the only way you it's one of those only ways you can actually protect yourself from these cyber threats and the cyber ecosystem attacks.
Okay. Thank you very much. From another anonymous attendee, we would appreciate some pointers on mitigating APK financial fraud in digital banking.
APT financial frauds. APTs are very, 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 very difficult to know, because these are people who are these are attacks that the network-based attacks that are executed by very good people, and they're usually bankrolled by either governments or by big organizations to exfiltrate data from banks, from hotels, and things like that. And they will not only use one method of attack. Actually, on infiltrating your system, they could actually install downloaders, they could install backdoors, they could install so many things within your organization, lateral movement and all that, persistence. They stay there in wait for more than even 1 year, trying to hit you when you least expect. So one of the pointers I could suggest is traffic monitoring. And like I said, inspecting your traffic inside your network perimeter can help you a lot, especially in off-peak hours, to monitor unusual behavior, because you would want to know why exactly was my bandwidth was, why was it actually consumed up to this level, up to at this time, yet no one was actually on the network at the time. So that is one of the pointers. If you notice your bandwidth is being used a lot, traffic monitoring, because APTs leverage more on exfiltration, because their ultimate goal is exfiltrating data from your systems. So you're going to have to monitor traffic, either use maybe some sniffers. Wireshark is a very good tool that you can use. The equivalent of that is T-Shark and maybe TCP dump. They should be able to monitor your network for such data. And then the other thing is application and domain whitelisting, because if everyone is going to access your system from out, and you've not maybe whitelisted some of the domains that are able to access your network, your critical servers from out, then you're leaving yourself out exposed. The other that whitelisting your application, your domains and IP addresses is very, very crucial, especially for the people in the digital banking. API whitelisting is very, very important for those who are into digital banking, because I've had issues where most of the aggregators have had their transactions, fraudulent transactions that have been initiated from maybe people's wallets, or from an organization's wallet, and you have this blame game. The organization is telling the aggregator that you didn't actually whitelist our IP address. The other one says the security is supposed to be on your side. So you're supposed to whitelist any IP address that accesses your systems or accesses your wallets on the other side. Then access control. Access control is another way you can actually mitigate APA financial fraud. That actually helps you, especially when you have the dual control policies, things like a least privilege, and maybe maker checker processes, for that matter, authorization, basically.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. I think when you're replying, you referred more to APT, but
Yes.
the person was actually asking about APK, the application.
Oh, APK.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, please.
APK. Did you want to write API?
No, APK, I mean
Oh,
the mobile applications
the mobile
that they
apps.
use in the digital financing. That's what the person referred to actually.
Okay.
Because most of the financial institutions actually use mobile applications to give effective service to their customers. So most of the attacks maybe could come through mobile. So I think that's what they're referring to.
Okay. Now the other thing is the problem we normally face with some of these APKs. You see, where are you downloading that APK? Is it from a legitimate source? That's one thing, because some of these APKs can be bound with malware, malicious code, just like any executable. So someone actually just crafts an APK, because usually APKs have what we call a manifest, that manifest.xml. That file actually that is responsible for granting the different permissions to your different your different applications on your phone. So if you're going to download an application, an APK from anywhere, because you can actually download an APK from Google, from whatever, you can download one and install it. But if you're in the habit of downloading these APKs, where are you downloading them from? So one thing is the source of your APKs, unless you're downloading them from maybe Play Store. But even Play Store, much as it has, because APKs are for Android, the Android operating system. So you're going to have maybe sandboxing, because at least Apple has what you call the sandboxing. It sandboxes each and every level of the operating system as it is starting, the DVM, the Deltek virtual machine, the APK itself, including all the applications that it communicates with. So if you're going to download APKs from maybe different sources, that is one of the things actually you should try to avoid, just downloading APKs. And the other thing probably is there is this VirusTotal, a very good website that I normally use to verify. You can just download that APK, throw it in VirusTotal. It's a sandbox. That VirusTotal should scan that APK for any malware code and tell you which maybe security vendors, either CrowdStrike, McAfee, Kaspersky, found any malware code in it. So I think it's all about where you get your APKs from, because even Play Store itself has been known to have funny APKs, especially if you don't have that Play Store Protect. So you will be able to download APKs that are not legitimate, that are bound with malware.
Okay, thank you about that. Maybe to add on, it also arises from third-party integration. Usually when we do mobile application development, usually link with different third parties, especially when you want to access endpoints. So usually some malwares may be tackled with the APKs, with the APIs, the endpoints that come in. So it could also happen. Let's go forward. Why is it necessary to carry out static analysis? Since dynamic analysis seems more efficient and would produce results much better. That's from Atwine.
Okay, Atwine, yes.